Okay, here we go, and I am all raring to go today. Uh, this is Midnight Skeptic talking to you all out there. I'm going to play my in music now. Here we go. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. I don't know. Should I keep reiterating the fact that my views aren't necessarily the views of Petaluma Community Access? My views, being the worldwidely recognized views as the right views, should be the views of Petaluma Community Access, but they're not necessarily those views. Okay, if anybody out there has differing opinions from mine, although it's kind of hard to imagine that, send them to me, really, as long as they're logical opinions and well-reasoned and, scientific and logical and make sense. Send them to me at the Midnight Skeptic at gmail.com. That's all one word, all lowercase. I'll get it, and then I'll deal with it appropriately. And also, that's the same place where you send hate mail and death threats to me. I love death threats. I haven't actually gotten a single death threat yet in the 5 years that I've been doing this show. I'm looking forward to it, kinda. I know who would want to kill me. I just can't imagine. Anyway, shout outs on Spotify internationally through Anchor.fm. I got 2 in the UK, 2 in Ireland, 2 in Germany, and at least 1 in the Czech Republic, and at least 2 in Australia. Listen to me off and on. I can't imagine them spending more time listening to me than their own skeptical shows that they have over there, and then a couple in New Zealand. I'll tell you, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, boy, does this country need somebody like her to be stepping forward and running for president. If Jacinda Ardern were running here in this country, I would vote for her in a minute. We need a brave, smart lady like that to step forward. Okay. The theme of this show overall, including all the little bits and pieces of things that I'm going to talk about, is Republicans are coming for you next. They're going to take away the rights of all of us eventually, except for old white guys who are Christians, who are Republicans. They're the only ones that are kind of safe in this country's environment. Okay, enough of that. Okay, shout outs real quick. The Sonora crowd, and I forgot to mention you guys on the last show, Bob and Sandy Fisher. Bob, I hope you're feeling better, and I'll see you in person next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next weekend. And Finnegan and Colleen and Martha Fisher, the nurse, take care of yourself. COVID is coming back. And Brad Fisher, Darrell Larson, Judy May and Leonidas Maciel, and down in Mexico City, Rosie Lopez Negrete. She posts on Facebook, but everything is in Spanish. And I try my best to translate in my own mind. I know there's apps that will do that for me, but I took Spanish 3 years in high school and 1 year at UC Davis. None of that helped because I didn't have anybody to really talk to in Spanish. It was just a academic exercise, and needless to say, it all evaporated, almost all of it, until I started private tutoring, after we moved up to Petaluma, my wife and I, Patty and I. And then I started tutoring some actual Spanish-speaking high school kids who clued me in on the real Spanish. And then also Rosie's Facebook posts to me. I try to do my best to translate them and then answer her in Spanish. But be that as it may. Okay, I got to do some more shout-outs here. Okay, let's see. Rosie Lopez. Okay, locally, Keith K., if you're listening, he's one of my newest listeners. Hey, Keith, if you want a T-shirt with the Midnight Skeptic my picture on it with Midnight Skeptic, let me know. I've got plenty here. You too, Nariman, if by any chance you want one, I've got them. Just let me know somehow. Tom and Nancy Throw, Kevin and Lori Conrad up in Katati, Rich and Kathy Berger over in Sebastopol, Stan and Kathy Gustafson down in Pacifica, and down in L.A., Jackie and Wayne Kolar, and their daughter, Samantha Kolar, who I just found out listens in every now and then. And over to Arizona, my brother Brandon and his wife, Mina, and their daughter, my niece, Andrea Murphy. Oh, no, that was her maiden name. Sorry. Andrea and Tim, and then their 3 little terrorists, as they call them. And Florida, Amelia Beamer and Nelson and Alice Lydell, and then up to North Carolina in the Raleigh-Durham area, head Dr. David Rubin, then all the way up to Long Island, where Geraldine Goldfinger lives, and she listens in occasionally. And then I forgot to mention Mickey Huff, who's a professor of history and communications at Diablo Valley College. He has his show. This is Wednesday, by the way, the 11th, and his show on KPCA-LP 103.3 FM ended about 2 hours ago. It's going on 4 o'clock right now. His show is 1 to 2, and then it's repeated over at KPFA over in Berkeley on 94.1 and on Friday from 1 to 2. Okay, all right, enough of that. Okay, I'm going to start the show off with some good news. Congressman Jamie Raskin, very intelligent guy. He's a lawyer and he's a Democrat from Maryland, and he's on the January 6th committee. And Congressman Jared Huffman, who's our local congressman. Of course, he's a Democrat from right around here. Both of them introduced a resolution into Congress for May 4th to be recognized as a National Day of Reason in America. It's a call to celebrate reason, empirical inquiry, knowledge, facts, and science as the guideposts for democratic progress. Of course, no Republicans will ever be for that. Jeez. Okay. And it's just a resolution. It's not a law that we would have to recognize May 4th. And the Star Trek, Star Wars, nerds out there always say, "May the 4th be with you." Okay, I guess that relates to that somehow. But anyway, okay. Jennifer Rubin, a columnist for the Washington Post, she writes that we have to stop talking about culture wars, quote unquote, which sounds, okay, this is her writing, that sounds like a battle between two sides over the hemlines of skirts or movie ratings or lifestyles. The overturning of Roe versus Wade is really a religious power grab. Here, here. Absolutely, that's what it is. This is not about culture. It is about appropriating state power to enforce theocratically driven positions. And make no mistake about it, it's a theocracy. And the Southern Baptists have now become enemy number one in my mind, in my opinion. They are the worst of the worst. I take that back. The Taliban over in Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are the worst. Okay, coming in a close second are the Southern Baptists. Okay. And then she goes on. I was riffing a bit on that. Okay. She goes on. Let's call it what it really is. State-enforced theocracy or religious authoritarianism. Oh. If we want to turn this country over to creeps like Jerry Falwell, may he not rest in peace, this is the way to go. Just become a Republican and your theologically nightmares will come true. Okay. This reason why the religious right has seized upon the abortion issue, and it shouldn't be an issue, but to them it is, goes all the way back to Brown v. Board of Education, when segregation was eliminated. And yes, where I'm going with this is the Republican Party is a racist cult. I mean, it's not even a political party anymore. It's just a cult of the orange sociopathic bloat bag. I've said this over and over and over and over again on my show. I need a sip right quick. Okay. May 17th, 1954, Brown v. Board of Education. Evangelical leader Jerry Falwell remained critical of Brown v. Board years after the Supreme Court decision. In a 1958 sermon by Jerry Falwell, God, his jowls are just have to be seen to be believed. Okay, this is a quote from Jerry Falwell's sermon. If Chief Justice Warren and his associates had known God's word and had desired to do the Lord's will, I am quite confident that the 1954 decision would never have been made. The facilities, meaning schools, should be separate. When God has drawn a line of distinction, we should not attempt to cross that line. The true Negro does not want integration. He realizes his potential is far better among his own race. Integration will destroy our race eventually. He meant whites. It sounds horrible, but that is Jerry Falwell's sermon in 1958. They've not changed that much, and I'm talking about the religious right. Christian evangelicals in the South began, after Brown versus Board, they began to establish segregation academies. More than 750,000 white children attended more than 3,000 of these academies during the first half of the 1970s, as public school systems were damaged. Oh, God, my handwriting strikes again. As public school systems were changed by a SCOTUS ruling upholding busing as a way to force desegregation. And do you remember the hullabaloo in Boston? Oh, I remember that. Bostonians, which a lot of them, maybe even most of them, were racist just as much as the, Southern evangelical Christians were. Threw rocks and spat upon buses. Especially racist were the Bostonians, the white Bostonians in Southie, that's South Boston. Anyway, I'm riffing again. I'm off my notes. Okay, in 1967, Jerry Falwell founded Liberty Christian Academy, and that's morphed into Liberty University, by the way. Okay, the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, moved to revoke the tax-exempt status of Bob Jones University, which had been established by this guy, Bob Jones. I don't know very much about him, and I neglected to Google him. But anyway, it was another segregation academy morphed into a university, which, and get this, they forbade interracial dating. Blacks were denied entry. They couldn't even go there until 1971. The Supreme Court of the United States decision, Ray Bob Jones, in May 24th, 1983, ruled against Bob Jones University in an 8-1 decision. This is concerning revoking their tax-exempt status because they were segregationists. Okay. All right. Now, W.A. Criswell, the Southern Baptist Convention's former president and pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, said, okay, and this was before Roe v. Wade, or shortly after it. I neglected to find a date for this sermon. Okay, quote, this is Southern Baptist W.A. Criswell, quote, I have always felt that it was only after a child was born and had a life separate from its mother that it became an individual person. And it has always, therefore, seemed to me that what is best for the mother and for her future should be allowed. Okay. That sort of makes sense, yes, back in those days. Okay, W.A. Criswell in 1971, before Roe, said, quote, we call upon Southern Baptists to work for legislation that will allow the possibility of abortion under such conditions as rape, incest, clear evidence of severe fetal deformity, and carefully ascertained evidence of the likelihood of damage to the emotional, mental, and physical health of the mother. That makes sort of sense from W.A. Criswell's point of view back in 1971, way before the pro-life movement became essentially Christian Nazis. Okay, in June of 1974, which is a year after Roe, these earphone, okay, he quotes, again, this is W.A. Criswell, "We affirm the resolution on abortion adopted in the Southern Baptist Convention of 1971, where this quote I just mentioned from W.A. Criswell, in 1974, he reaffirmed it again. Okay. Okay. In my notes, I've written down sickening, underlined. Supreme Court of the United States, Samuel Alito, in the leaked Roe v. Wade opinion, invokes a 17th century British jurist which supported marital rape. It was impossible for a husband to rape his wife, according to this jurist and religious leader, whose name is Sir Matthew Hale, by the way. Samuel Alito, the author of the leaked reversal of Roe v. Wade document, cites not him by name, but his theory. Okay, he cites Matthew Hale for the original intent of the United States Constitution. His jurisprudence work reflected public, meaning men, opinion at the time. A girl's body belonged to her father until the marriage ceremony, when the father's property, meaning the daughter, passed to the new husband. A man could beat or rape his wife because she was nothing more than property. Excuse me. Itchy eyeball. Okay. It was not illegal, meaning to beat or rape his wife. Like many Christian evangelical extremists, they believe woman was made from Adam's rib. That's why the Bible and the Torah shouldn't be used in any Supreme Court decision or any kind of a court decision, really. Okay. There's a YouTube that I strongly encourage all of my listeners out there to click onto. It's Alyssa Milano, Alysa, last name Milano, capital Milano. It's called The History of Abortion, and it's sponsored, and I think she's written some columns for the Washington Post, and it's called The History of Abortion You Need to Know. Okay, click onto it, and then Roe v. Wade might get you to it. Anyway, abortion rights in the U.S., the history of it. Okay, on YouTube. Okay. Until the mid-1800s, baby deliveries and abortions were provided by midwives. Okay, those are women who deal with women's pregnancies and reproductive health rights, reproductive health issues, I meant to say. Okay, around 1850, the medical establishment, meaning men, began a campaign to shift reproductive health care away from midwives to doctors who were, the medical knowledge at that time was woefully inadequate, and shifting healthcare away from midwives to doctors, male obstetricians and gynecologists, which was a growing subject in medical schools, which women were not allowed to go to, by the way. Okay, J. Marion Sims, S-I-M-S. He's considered the father of modern gynecology, who performed medical experiments on black slave women without anesthesia. He did this. And then he was elected in a few years after his experimentations. He would later be elected president of the American Medical Association. In 1857, the AMA formed a committee to push to criminalize abortion, saying a woman, okay, I'm quoting this, a woman should not be allowed to judge for herself whether to have an abortion because, oh man, this is difficult to read. Under the stimulus of uterine excitation, her mind is subject to actual derangement. This is a quote, direct quote from the position paper, I guess that's what you'd call it, of the AMA in 1857. Women were at that time not allowed into Harvard Medical School, and I'm not sure who the woman was that was admitted to the first medical school of any kind, but for Harvard, it was not until 1936 that the first woman was admitted to Harvard Medical School. Her name was Faye, F-E, I think she's Hispanic of some sort, Faye del Mundo, M-U-N-D-O. Mundo means world in Spanish. Faye of the world. I mean, I'm not sure. It sounds like a made-up name. I don't know this for sure. Another sip. Okay. In the 1890s, abortion was made illegal in the United States. About 3,000 women died each year after that from illegal abortions. That's what's going to happen if Roe v. Wade is overturned in this country, in those states that have anti-abortion laws raring to go. Okay. This prince of a guy, Anthony Comstock, who was secretary of the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, and along with the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, declared that in a series of laws that they proposed and lobbied for, they declared contraception obscene, immoral, and therefore illegal. a woman having sex for pleasure is a bad thing. And I honestly think that most of the hard right, Republicans, MAGA heads, evangelical Christian Nazis, think this as well. Women's pleasure from sex, to the extent that Republican MAGA head men can even give it to them, is bad. In 1960, the birth control pill was introduced to the American public, but it was illegal in some states. Okay, that changed via Griswold versus Connecticut in 1965, and it was a Supreme Court decision that overturned that anti-birth control pill law in Connecticut. But the the Connecticut law applied only to married women. Okay, so after Griswold versus Connecticut, married women could take birth control pills, but not single women, those immoral B words. Okay. The decision that changed that was Eisenstadt versus Baird in 1972. This is a year before Roe v. Wade. Okay. After that Eisenstadt versus Baird decision, women over 18, married or not, could get birth control pills. All right. One of the things that decision, plus Griswold versus Connecticut and everything, enrollment by women in colleges dramatically increased, and women entering the workforce dramatically increased. And these decisions, are based upon the concept of privacy. And yes, I know that the word privacy is not in the Constitution. The word is liberty. Okay. Now, if you're for liberty, and the word liberty has been co-opted by the far-right evangelical Nazis that are pro-Trumpers and everything. Moms for Liberty, that's one of the organizations that has co-opted the word liberty, and they totally don't mean that. If you really have liberty, you can read what you want, have sex with who you want, marry who you want, and that's real liberty, but Republicans will never go for that. Okay. Okay. Enough of the history of abortion in this country. Again, let me say, Alyssa Milano has an excellent YouTube. I don't know what you call it. It's not a show. She's just giving a lecture on abortion history. But please log on to her. Listen to this. Watch this. Okay. Good news. Good news. Whew, I get so tired of just bad news all the time. I understand that most of the news coming out of our government because of Republicans is bad news, but I try to mitigate it now and then. Anyway, here's some good news about the environment. Okay. Research just published in the peer-reviewed scientific journal Nature, which is one of the preeminent scientific journals in this country, from scientists at the University of Texas at Austin, says that they have modified an enzyme that breaks down plastic waste in hours. Not decades, which is what it usually takes when you throw a plastic bottle onto a trash pile. Okay. We could even use the enzyme variant to clean up sites contaminated by plastic pollution. Engineers used products made from the polymer polyethylene terephthalate, better known as PET. You can see this on some plastic containers of this or that. Okay. Polyethylene terephthalate, PET. Okay. It usually takes centuries to degrade naturally. Waste management companies can use this enzyme called fast petase. Okay, PET hyphen ASE, fast petase, to allow bacteria to degrade PET plastics faster. They used machine learning to pinpoint 5 mutations of the bacteria that would allow them to degrade the PET plastics faster. The enzyme cut the basic polymer units, and polymer units just means a long string of units all strung together. Okay, I'm not a chemist enough to be able to explain exactly what polymers are, but they are smaller units strung together to make plastic. Okay, I'm off my notes again, as you can probably tell. The enzyme cut the basic polymer units down into the basic molecular units, a process called depolymerization. Then the chemical engineers could put these units back together to form new plastic products. It's called, and that process is called repolymerization. Okay, this process can be done at temperatures less than 50 degrees Celsius, which is quite a bit lower, therefore takes less energy than older processes. 50 degrees Celsius is about 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, I'm off my notes again, which is a lot less than current plastic recycling processes, therefore cheaper. You know, if you have to make more heat, it costs money. Well, this is cheaper. Okay, 12% of all global waste is PET plastics. I was not aware that it was that much. I know it was a lot, but geez, 12% of all global waste. Wow. And less than 10% of it, meaning the PET plastics, is or can be recycled. The plastics and oil industries have emphasized recycling plastics to consumers. They make commercials on television and magazine ads and everything emphasizing recycle the plastic. And they know that most plastics can't, C-A-N-T, can't be recycled. In an effort to distract consumers from the plastic waste problem befouling the earth. Well, maybe, just maybe, we can now do something about a lot of this plastic waste, make it into new plastic objects with this new enzyme that University of Texas at Austin chemical engineers have come up with. Okay, with all the bad news coming out of Florida or DeSantis land, I have a hero out there from Florida. It's a 18-year-old kid. Okay, and I'll tell you about him a little bit, and then be ready for this guy to achieve more fame than he has now. Okay, his name, Zander Moritz. Okay, I'll spell that for you. Capital Zander, capital Moricz. Okay, he's been his class president at his school for 4 years. He's openly gay, and he's graduating this June. And Sarasota County is where his school is. Let's see. I was watching a segment on MSNBC, my lefty propaganda channel, and I was trying to write these things down. And then I Googled him, but he's not that well known online yet. But mark my words, he will be. Okay, let's see. The name of the school, Pine View School. And it's not a regular high school. It's kind of like a special school for gifted and talented students. Okay, but he's on his way to Harvard. He's already been accepted, and he just has to graduate. But, okay, he has been warned by the principal and the vice principal and the other powers that be that he'd better not say anything about his lawsuit against the state of Florida. You know, he's part of a number of complainant parties to this lawsuit against the state of Florida and Ron DeSantis about the Don't Say Gay law. And I'm aware that it's not officially called that, and they don't have those exact words in it. It's that law, the Parental Rights in Education law, prohibits any classroom instruction on gender dysphoria, gender identity, sexual identity, sexual attraction, or anything of that nature. Okay, well, it is so vague. If you want to read that stupid-ass Florida law, Google it. And, okay, well, what constitutes classroom instruction? I've gone over this subject, controversy. It shouldn't be controversial. But anyway, on 4 or 5 previous shows. But he's challenging this in court. His lawyer is John Quinn, and the ACLU is backing him up on this. Anyway, they threatened to cut off his microphone because he's going to give a graduation speech. I mean, he's class president. Of course he's going to do that. And if he has the balls to mention the Don't Say Gay law or his own identity, they're going to cut off his microphone. Educational bureaucrats, or especially spineless ones, like the principal is. Okay, who's the principal? I think I wrote him down. Stephen Covert is the principal, and Sarasota County Schools Board Superintendent is Jane. Jane Goodwin. Damn, my handwriting. Like I say, I was writing this down really quickly. But anyway, there's a whole lawsuit against the state of Florida that he is a part of. And we hope that they're successful in overturning the Don't Say Gay law. Ooh. Republicans are afraid of gays and transgender kids. Ooh, Republicans, the party of fear and hate. Okay, here's the party of fear and hate, the GOP, their ignorance on full display. Michigan Republican Ryan Kelly, who is running for governor, and as a Republican, of course he's a Republican. Oh boy. Boy. I'm having a brain freeze. Okay, let me go back to my notes and just read what I actually wrote down here. He's running for governor of Michigan, has openly attacked the idea of, are you ready for this? Democracy. A quote from him, this is what he said: "Socialism, it starts with democracy. That's the ticket for the left. They want to push this idea of democracy, which turns into socialism, which turns into communism in every instance." Okay, this is Ryan Kelly mouthing off like the ignorant dick that he is. Okay, and Kelly's distinction between democracy and constitutional republic is drawn from the John Birch Society in the 1960s, which used that distinction to oppose the idea of one person, one vote that supported blacks voting. August 2nd is the Michigan primary. He's running against 7 other Republicans, probably equally as ignorant as he is. Another sip. August 2nd, Michigan primary. Okay, Gretchen Whitmer is the current governor in Michigan, and she's, of course, a reasonable Democrat. And she's the one that was threatened with kidnapping by the ultra-right MAGA-head Republican Wolverine Watchers, which was a paramilitary militia wannabes. It's these guys that wear camo outfits and run around the woods with their AK-47s, playing saviors of, I don't know what they're trying to save. Make the world safe for the cult of the orange sociopathic bloat bag. Okay. Bit of good news. Okay. Again, from the environment. Okay. A local dairy, Petaluma, the Strauss family creamery, their dairies, their family-owned dairies, have begun feeding their dairy cows red seaweed, powdered and mixed into cattle feed in small amounts. Blue Ocean Farms on the Big Island of Hawaii is expanding its production of this red seaweed product. In fact, I think they're going to build a production facility down near Fresno in California, near the feedlot. And I'm having a brain freeze on this huge beef cattle feedlot down near Bakersfield, actually, just off of Interstate 5 going north. Anyway, okay. Blue Ocean Farms. Okay, Big Island, Hawaii. Red seaweed product. And they call this, oh boy, got to read my hand. Brominata, Brominata. That's their trade name for this product. It has been authorized by the California Department of Food and Agriculture to be fed to cattle to reduce methane and methane emissions from cows through burps and farts. Okay, the University of California, Davis has confirmed that it works. Okay, so that's good news. Okay, methane, although the amount of methane in the atmosphere is minuscule compared to the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is now, I think, up to about 430 parts per million. But anyway, methane is about 45 times more powerful than CO2 as far as trapping heat in the atmosphere. It's just very fortunate that there's not all that much methane in the atmosphere, but there's enough to make a difference in our ever-increasing atmospheric temperature. Okay. Okay, I've got a little bit of time left. Evangelical Christian churches are hopping onto the stolen election big lie bandwagon. And it's just an article from the New York Times that I'm just going to read here. I've got a few more minutes left on the Midnight Skeptic rant for this week. Okay, this pastor of this Baptist church, after he got through this sermon and saving souls for Jesus, turned the microphone over to William J. Federer. It's Federer, like the tennis guy. I have not had a chance to Google this guy, but there's some information about him and his beliefs here in this article that I'm going to read to you. An evangelical commentator, this is who he is, William J. Federer, and one-time Republican congressional candidate, of course he's a Republican, through an hour-long PowerPoint presentation based on his 2020 book. Okay, this is the title of his book that he wrote, Socialism, the Real History from Plato to the Present. How the deep state capitalizes on crises to consolidate control. Well, that's the pot calling the kettle beige. Republicans want control. That's what they're all about. That's the only thing they're concerned about. Okay. Many congregants scribbled in the notebooks that they had brought from home. Okay, this is a quote. This is a quote from William J. Federer. Quote, I believe God is pushing the world to a decision-making moment. Mr. Federer said, building toward his conclusion, quote, we used to have national politicians that held back the floodgates of hell. Floodgates of hell. The umbrella's been ripped after January 6th. In other words, he was for the Capitol invaders. And now it's raining down upon every one of us. We had politicians that were supposed to certify that. I'm not quite certain what he means by that. To certify that. I think that the January 6th goons didn't want the election to be certified. I don't know. But anyway, this is what he said. And instead, they just accepted it. What? Accepting the will of the people? Well, that's not right. And lo and behold, an anti-Christian spirit's been released across the country and the world. This is the kind of nuts that populate the modern iteration of the Republican Party, which is no longer a political party. It's a cult. The cult of the orange sociopathic bloat bag. And the reason I call him the bloat bag, have you ever seen pictures, one picture in particular of him attempting to play tennis? He's just a bloat bag. Okay, there's no other word that I can think of to describe him. Okay, I'm getting close to the end here. Maybe some of you are relieved to hear that, but I'm going to, on the next show, and I'll give you a hint as to this. There's some studies been done. Very few transgender children change their minds. In other words, detransition after 5 years. Okay. And I'm sure that Republicans won't accept the results of this study because it was done by elites. Okay, so here's my out music. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, on the radio version of this, it's going to be broadcast on this Sunday, the 15th at 9 p.m., and it's going to take me an hour or two, maybe 3, to get this downloaded onto YouTube. And then, so tonight, you'll be able to see my lovely face mouthing off all these rants. So I wish you a good coming week. And I'll do this again next week, and I'm going to keep doing it until I get it right, whenever that'll be. Okay. So long, everybody. Damn.